is to cut the line. Flash Barry Allen's power is pure kinetic poetry, movement sculpted by the speed force, a rhythm that synchronizes brain, body, and an almost otherworldly energy. That rhythm is his strength and, crucially, his fragile fault line. Batman doesn't attempt to outrun the Flash. He aims to scramble the interface that lets Barry outrun death. Inject nanites or a tailored neurodisruptor near the neck or spinal column to wreck proprioception. Cause a seizure at full velocity. A single misstep at super speed is not a stumble, it is a living missile. Another avenue is thermal manipulation, rapidly lowering body temperature to slow metabolism and sever the speed force conduit, or using exotic tech or magic to break his link entirely. When the interface is compromised, the Flash isn't slowed so much as weaponized against himself. Lightning becomes shrapnel, phasing becomes catastrophic, and after images become painful ghosts of control lost. Batman's approach is asymmetry at its most clinical. Use a hero's defining gift and make it the mechanism of collapse. It's immediate, it's terrifying, and it doesn't require brute force. Instead, it requires understanding of physiology and the unique metaphysics of speed. The result is chilling. The fastest man alive turned into a danger to everyone in a split second. Batman's plan is not about killing the Flash. It's about turning motion into momentum-driven ruin. Aquaman Arthur Curry's power isn't just physical strength. It's an intimate bond with the ocean, telepathic control of marine life, endurance in crushing depths, and a physiology built for salt and pressure make him a force no landlocked foe can ignore. Batman's Imagine a king who flinches from waves, telepathic command collapses, stamina bleeds away, and survival becomes an injury cock. That psychological assault pairs with a pragmatic backup, logistical deprivation. Trap Aquaman in a sealed, dry environment, or otherwise deny him contact with water until his Atlantean strength and resilience fade. This isn't a knockout blow, it's an erasure of the wellspring of his power. The cruelty lies in the existential nature of the attack. It doesn't merely wound, it unanchors identity. Without the ocean, Arthur is reduced to human limits, and a Titan becomes a man counting seconds. Batman's logic is brutal but clear. Cut the connection to the element that creates the hero, and the hero becomes vulnerable in the most fundamental way. Green Lantern, a Green Lantern's ring is a cosmic tool whose limits are defined by imagination and will. Batman realized the ring's true weakness. It obeys the mind that wields it. So instead of smashing the artifact, Bruce aimed to fracture belief. He would plant post-hypnotic suggestions, slip in conditioning while the Lantern slept, and use psychological weapons to seed doubt. Once confidence erodes, the constructs falter. The same green energy that could make anything real obeys uncertainty instead of intention. Add Scarecrow-style fear toxins to the equation, and the result is compounding. Terror eats at will, and once will weakens, the ring becomes a paperweight. Bruce also kept a Yellow Lantern ring in reserve, ready to weaponize fear itself against those who rely on willpower. The elegance of the approach is its subtlety. Victory by cognitive attrition rather than physical defeat. Strip away the Lantern's certainty, and you stop more than a power, you dismantle identity. For someone whose greatest strength is belief, losing faith equals being disarmed. Batman's gambit is psychological jujitsu. Use the mind against the wielder and watch cosmic power become impotent. Wonder Woman Diana's reputation isn't built on a single punch, it's built on an iron will and a refusal to yield. Batman's response to that unstoppable persistence was to weaponize endurance combat against opponents that exactly matched her abilities. Since surrender is not part of her mystical tools like the bind of veils to warp her perception, or engineered scenarios where waves of enemies forced her to fight to the brink. The tactic respects her strength while exposing its limits. Even gods have a threshold. The method is both respectful and ruthless. Force the warrior into a spirit provide. Batman's logic here reveals an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the only way to stop a hero is to deny them the dignity of box. Shapeshifting, intangibility, telepathy, mass manipulation. He can be literally anything at the molecular level. To counter such protean power, Batman chose a plan that removes the usefulness of change itself. The idea was magnesium-coated nanites, microscopic particles that ignite on exposure to air. Once introduced into Martian tissue, normal processes like sweating or shedding skin would fuel continuous combustion. It's not an instant kill, it is persistent agony, an internalized, distracting inferno that absorbs attention and derails thought. In a narrative variant, the nanites are slipped into a drink by someone trusted, turning intimacy into betrayal. The brilliance and horror of the approach is its intimacy. Adaptation becomes a liability when the body's very mechanics feed the torment. Jaeon might not die, but he cannot function. His shape and resilience become irrelevant when every change burns. This contingency attacks survival instincts and mental focus rather than than brute force, making it one of Batman's coldest strategies. It highlights a disturbing calculus when a being's core advantage is adaptability. The counter is to convert adaptation into self-inflicted harm. Tonight, and other sensory weapons designed not just to weaken, but to overwhelm. The core concept: force Superman's body to absorb energy and sensory input faster than it can safely process. Imagine sun absorption cranked to a painful extreme: sight, sound, smell, and solar intake all amplified into agony. Couple that with psychological levers and you have a two-pronged plan: sensory meltdown plus emotional manipulation. Bruce holds contingencies that use Superman's attachments as vectors threats to Lois, or orchestrated tragedies that force the Man of Steel into choices that cost him strategic clarity. The result is devastating. Invulnerability turned inside out, with compassion becoming a predictable vulnerability. Batman's strategy is surgical: make the strongest being on Earth suffer and then force a decision that betrays his mission. It's not brute force, it's exploitation of physiology and conscience. The moral cost is enormous. The man who saves the world could be made to fail by the very things that make himself by exploiting those buried fishes. Hostage scenarios tied to his parents' death, staged reminders of trauma, so a political lever: votes to remove him from the league, public shaming, or engineered distrust can isolate him socially, cutting off the cooperative network. Contingency against himself reveals the core tension of his method: planning in secret isolates him, and isolation magnifies his susceptibility to personal attack. It's the ultimate irony. The protector who would break any friend is broken by his own past. If you liked this deep dive and want more breakdowns of comic logic, movie changes, and the darkest contingency plans, give the video a like and consider subscribing for weekly explainers. Until next time, keep asking the questions the heroes want.